Afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. It is October 5th, 2021. It's Tuesday, and it's 1:30 p.m. and you're at the Wausau Waterworks Commission meeting. Welcome. Everybody here is present on the commission. Thank you for joining us. The first item on our agenda is to approve the minutes from the September 7th, 2021 meeting. Motion by Robertson, second by Herbst. Any discussion here? See anybody? So all those in favor, approving the minutes, can signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. Next up is our director's report. We got a lot of stuff going on here. Maybe I'll pass it over to Eric.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, we have quite the laundry list of just some information and some things going on. Everything from the treatment facilities, some updates on the water, the first public information meeting minutes, questions that we had for the solar. So if there's anything specific that you want to dive into or have questions on any specific items, happy to do that.
Mr. Robinson is carrying up.
Here, in anticipation of the next public informational meeting on the solar.
Yep.
Well, we have a much more, I know that you're working with Midwest Environmental Group and others, but we have a more detailed description of what we are looking at and why we're looking at to the information that we presented by third party relative to value of solar.
Yeah, right now I've been in contact via email to David Bootke from Midwest Technical College. He is one of the instructors for renewable energy. And he is interested in coming and helping us out to present some information. I don't have a confirmed date from him yet on when he's available. Midwest Renewable Energy, I contacted two different individuals at that organization, have not had a response from either one yet.
But beyond that, will we get into I think the one thing that I observed is that we didn't do a very good job of outlining what we wanted to do and why we wanted to do it. So building upon what we might get from a third party is the value of solar. Will we do a much more formal presentation on what it is we're looking to do? And I think that gets into that whole issue of how many trees.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And be a little bit more
Yeah.
embellishing why we're there.
Yeah, I think one of the things, is you kind of like the egg and chicken thing, like we had the same thing in how we approached the wastewater facilities. We came forward before any decisions were made, right? So we didn't have all the details. We were still working through viability and feasibility. That's the same thing we're doing here. Because typically in the past, we would come after a lot of decisions have already been made, and that's not what we want to do. So there is a lot of information that we're gathering now. So there will be a lot more information at the next information meeting. I did think it was important for us to get feedback. Mainly it was from the neighborhood group because that's who it's going to directly affect. But we'll also have costs. We're looking at different size arrays, to deal with some of the comments that we've had as well. And then to also look at different costs for those, as well as actual power usage versus, total power usage at the proposed plant. So yeah, I guess in a nutshell, to answer your question, John, yeah, we'll have a lot more information at the next one. So.
Yes, Mr. Force.
Eric, do we have any idea as to the timing of this? Is it going to be before the holidays?
Yes. I'm trying to get things lined up to have the third party come and speak so that it looks like now it'll be early November.
Okay.
It definitely before Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Is it beyond the realm of practicality, I guess, that we have some kind of a rehearsal of the presentation and maybe some members of the board who wish to could come and just, offer any critique that they might have. And my other point, then I'll shut up. Paul Svitlik, the neighborhood guy, the neighborhood representative, I should say, is very interested in this. And he was the one who had emailed me back after the last meeting. I think I reported that at the last commission meeting. he might be someone to bounce some things off, just to see whether what we're presenting makes sense, or whether we're missing anything that he's aware of that the neighbors are concerned about and would want addressed.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, Jim. I can do that. I can
Okay.
definitely reach out to Paul on that. Would the commission like at possibly the November meeting to see the presentation ahead of the public information meeting?
I would be in favor of that.
Okay, all right, we can arrange that. There might be a few details or whatever, but you know, should be pretty close to ready for the public for feedback. Yeah, I can do that.
Is that on the second, Mayor?
Yes.
First Tuesday? Okay. It's also election day. I don't know if there's any voting going on.
That'll be a full agenda too.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
Yes, Mr. G.
Under wastewater, the start of drying biosolids. I think there was some discussion about where we'd be, if we would be landfilling the material, or I thought we had Sue and Olson Paving potentially wanting some of that product.
They do, but that wouldn't be available to them until it's determined to be Class A by the DNR. Also, we're going to have an interim period where it's going to be Class B, and more than likely it'll go to the landfill.
Joe, what's the timeline? How long does it take to get the Class A approval?
They didn't give me a specific timeline, but did they, do you, Dave?
I guess we got some concerns about getting the bugs worked out of it and
Yeah.
making sure
Sure.
we're meeting the requirements for the Class A.
Oh, sure.
And so it's a little bit undetermined. If it goes smoothly, it'll go quicker, and if we have issues, it'll take longer. So the plan for the interim, we're talking about taking it to the
No,
landfill
I understand it.
and then, yeah.
Mr. G.
The work being done on the west side interceptor sewer. How many feet, is it full replacement or is it lining or? You know that. It's item number 8 on the wastewater. It says rehab the west side interceptor sewer.
Right. Do you? Yeah, that'd be great.
I'm Brian, City Wausau Collection Supervisor. What we're kind of looking at right now is lining as a method. We're gathering as much information for like revising our specifications for the lining. With that, also manhole rehab will be involved. We also have specifications we're working on right now with Strand on that too. So that way we can do everything in that same phase, while there's bypass, everything's happening at one time. We can get a good product in the end in doing so, but it should be from I don't remember my streets exactly, maybe 11th, let's say. I'm looking at maybe from 11th or South 11th Ave, by Colby there, going east all the way to basically 3rd Ave. Right, where we had our collapse over a year ago at this point, and in that same area.
There's a drop in that one manhole and it kind of goes cross country. We should, to modify that, we should ramp that so there doesn't create the turbulence. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because I think there's a free fall, maybe only a foot.
There's 2 of those. One, there's in the manhole that we had replaced. And the easement line, let's call it.
Yeah.
And we're looking at also doing, it's a new manhole, but it's already showing signs of possible corrosion, let's say. So we're looking at possibly rehabbing that manhole as well, doing additional services on it or using product. And then I know the manhole at the intersection of Park and M, I believe it is, that has it coming into that one with that turbulence that you're referencing. I'm hoping We're discussing methods, I guess, with manholes, but possibly, the liner method for that. It's more resistant long-term, than a full replacement.
Thank you, Ray.
Yep.
All right, anything else, any other highlights or questions? Okay, I think we're good. Put that on file. Thank you very much. We're now on item number 3, discussion and possible action awarding proposal for the development of a lead service and replacement program. Over to you.
Yeah, so we sent out an RFP to, hire an engineering firm to prepare a lead service line replacement program for us, which ultimately we'll submit to the DNR for approval. And so we outlined a bunch of, our criteria that we wanted for them to include, and then we wanted them to have experience. We received 2 proposals, and both were rated by 4 of us independently, and then the average scores are in there. Based on those scores, we're recommending the award to Clark Dietz and CDM Smith.
Yes, Mr. Robinson.
I have a number of questions relative to it. What will we get from this contract at the end? Is it, and let me preface that, it seems like they're relying upon the utility staff to do a lot of the gap filling. So at the end of the day, we know that we've got 17,000 linings, we've got 8,000 that are unknown, or we suspect to potentially have lead. So what will we get? What will the product look like, and how much? What will the expectations be upon the utility staff, and can we meet those expectations within this time?
Yeah, I think we can meet the expectations. There is an additional cost that Clark Dietz provided for helping us out with the lead service line inventory, which I think should be considered for us to help us out. And I need a little bit more detail on how they're going to do that. Some firms use software, to kind of interpolate what services, because we need a good estimate. It's not like we're going to be able to get into every home before we submit something to the DNR. So we need the best estimate that we can. But yeah, I mean, no matter how we do this, there's going to be staff time and resources put in, especially on the inventory side of things. I think what we're going to get is we're going to get a full written plan on steps that we need to do. That'll be the deliverable. And then how we're going to approach it with timelines, estimated costs on each of those items that we're moving ahead with year by year. Obviously, the replacement plan is at least 15 years, if not more. So we've asked for a 15-year plan. So to remove the lead, ultimately the commission will have to determine, if that's going to be affordable or not on the city side. So
I actually like True Penny's proposal with the cost detail much better. I thought that Clark Dietz threw a lot of the information that you threw out here back at us as their justification. But I don't see reason for us to rely on others' development workers. I think that's something that we should be doing. Got the one in the packet that's
Yep.
modeled after Green Bay, and the DNR has on the website several other model orders. Milwaukee, Sheboygan, others. I think that that's something we can do, because I think a number of those decisions, time, or there's, if you strip that out of Clark Dietz, what is the cost savings to us?
sure.
But I just don't see there being much value in them making a model ordinance, giving it back to us and tweaking it. Ordinance has a number of definitional ambiguities that we would want to try to clean up and look at some of the others. So how can, given the fact that we have the significant detail and costing from True Penny, but not the significant costing, so we negotiate terms as they
Sure.
or they were more expensive.
Yep, we can. Absolutely. I think one of the things that True Penny, I mean, they just didn't have any experience in putting this together. I mean, they had none. So that was the biggest takeaway that I got from it. This would really be their first one, putting a plan like this together. So.
Mr. Jean,
With regard to the, what's not part of the proposal, material inventory and documentation, it seems we pretty well know when we went to copper, if I remember correctly, it was in mid-60s, roughly speaking. Is that correct, Scott? Or remember?
Fall of 69.
Fall of 69. So any house that was built prior to that, there's pretty good odds that it's gotten lead service unless it's been replaced. Is that fair?
That would be fair.
So if we just go to the assessor's office and ask for the age of the homes, you would think you'd have a pretty good, I don't think they're not gonna, DNR's not gonna get excited because they're not gonna know any different than we will, that we miss a few.
Right.
So I'm kind of with John on that point. So thank you.
Mr. Jean, Force.
John, are you suggesting we do this ourselves?
The development of the ordinance.
Well, this whole plan,
My comments were specific to the direction, to the development of
ordinance.
the ordinance. I have a number of other concerns with this. Race.
Well, when I read the plan, I mean, I do see some deliverables, but there's nothing here that's, I'm sure, that in my view is beyond the scope of what we could do ourselves. A public information plan, we should be able to do that, communicating with the DNR. That's something we do already. The LSLR inventory, we just touched on that in this previous comment. In development of the overall plan, I just don't know. I agree with you. I'm not sure spending 69,000, I'm not sure what we get for it. That some of it we couldn't do ourselves, maybe all of it.
I think it's really preparing the deliverable that we're going to submit to the DNR. That's really, all time and resources in-house. That's a challenge for us on the administrative side.
It is, particularly in view of the staffing issues. I understand that.
And we have the other mandates that are coming down are going to be doing a corrosion control, plan. We have to get an RFP out for that now. I guess, from an administrative standpoint, trying to administer these things and get timelines in place, I guess, I agree with you that we're probably going to be doing the majority of the work on inventory. I agree with you that we could do the ordinance in-house. Maybe Nate's already been working on it for us and you have a copy, a draft that we can review, but I think actually doing a deliverable to submit to the DNR from the administrative standpoint, I think, I don't know if we'd be able to compare that.
Could we go back to Clark Dietz or to the other firm if we want to, and ask them to maybe pare this down to something that's less robust than the current submittal and take into view some of the things that we felt we could do ourselves?
I certainly can. Yeah, it's within our realm to do that, to have that discussion.
Mr. Robinson.
So my concern is that, I think you're driving some of this off of discussions that we had in the commission, like the 15-year cycle, we're looking at 533 replacements a year. The average has been 80. That whole issue of communications there, I think we talked a little bit about the 3 days approach early on was to engage others, including the health department and others, to get the word out on the safety and health and safety and human health risks associated with service lines. And I didn't see that in the proposal. So I think that in some cases it's goes beyond what we need, such as the legislation, but in other cases, based on what we saw in Green Bay and their success, it seemed to be that engagement of others early. And I don't know if that's a critical component of this, but clearly, if we're going to have success in trying to deal with those 8,000 lines, and maybe it's less based on what Joe said, and approach and look at 69. But I think we've got to build that from day one, that approach. And who are our allies? How do we utilize them? Because they're going to be developing a recommendation. So my concern is that communication side seems a little bit weak. The regulation side seems a little bit strong. We can do some of those things internally. I don't know what our product will be. I understand that we need that metal and the critical issue is the time. But I don't know, from a commissioner's perspective, what will the product look like that will help us advance that lead service line replacement program?
Yeah, I mean, the communication plan is part of, I mean, that's just part of the plan, right? As well as like what the sequence will be, right? I agree with you that, before the commission would step into recommending a mandatory ordinance, I mean, we need a communication plan on how that's going to go out and get feedback and provide that. So, part of this too is part of that, for that sequencing, like I said, estimates, things like that, on doing that. I think one of the things that we've always been challenged with at the utility as well as the city is communication, right? It falls on us to communicate. We do have restrictions based on how we communicate, with IT, with different ways that we can communicate. So it's always something that I've struggled with, that we need to do a better job. I absolutely agree with you. We do not do a good job with that. And that will be a key component of this, is we have to communicate well, for this to go well. And I don't have a plan on how to begin that yet.
So let me ask a question. So do we want engineers designing our communication plan?
Well, yeah, and I get it.
See that from the perspective of, it takes some unique skills.
Yep.
And it takes some unique engagement. It takes people to think out of both sides of the brain. And my fear in engineering firms is sometimes that's not a specialty that they possess. And we have the right team assembled to get to our end goal.
Well, I guess the way I look at it, like with the proposals that we received, and we can certainly hire a communication firm specifically to do that. This is a firm that's had experience in doing it and being successful at it, throughout the country. So, if we need more details on how that happens before any decisions are made, we can certainly get that. We can talk about details in the proposal and stuff too.
Mr. Robinson.
I would just maybe request that we got that special meeting next week relative to the HR issues. Is it possible for you to maybe sit down with the parties to get a little bit more understanding development of where it is, what looks to be like a lump sum proposal? We get greater breakdown from Park Pete's and Realtors. And the services, they outlined them in the proposal, but they didn't provide a breakdown.
Sure.
In the budget, we could look at that, and then I think that your feeling is that this is a time critical, time sensitive issue. But I'd also like to just explore that component of how are we going to engage people in that communication? And if we don't have a comfort level with them, do we need to carve that out and then look at how we need to address that separately at a later date? I am again very concerned that we try to engage other community partners and again, the health department, because that's even be critical in 3 days.
Yeah, I can certainly ask them if we have something prepared for next week. We'll certainly put it in there if we can get everything put together. Yep.
Any other questions or comments on this? Yes, Mr. James.
Would we have to, I see June 2022 doesn't want to come out. When is there a required date? Is that date?
There is not, I picked that just because I felt like our staff could handle, our side of the work within that time frame. There's not a hard and fast rule that says June 22. We have to have it done by then.
Anyone else? Okay, it sounds like we would like a little bit more information before we make a recommendation, so go ahead and move on to item number 4, discussion and review of the draft lead service line replacement ordinance. A couple people here who are ready to talk.
Yeah, I guess I can start this off. We've been talking about what an ordinance would look like, and this is a very rough draft of what an ordinance would look like. The attorney's office had assisted putting this together. Really, Nate put this together based on, I think it was 6 other communities that he had pulled some information. There's definitely, areas, some communities help pay for the replacement, some communities do not. These are all, future decisions for the commission to consider. And then how do you pay for those? Do they come from rate revenue, is authorized by the PSC up to 50% of the private side cost, or, all of those things, and details can be worked out as well. I don't know, Nate, if you want to, just how many communities and stuff did you look at? Their different ordinances.
Yeah, so I looked at, I think, 6 different communities and kind of just read through them all, and then what I liked and what I didn't like. And then talking with you of, okay, then how do we even make this more specific for Wausau? The main one that I think you basically just laid out of what's really that still needs to be, I guess, finalized would be the whole financing of the replacement. Some municipalities very in detail outlined in their ordinance of what that program would look like, the requirements for an application to be submitted, to be approved, where that money would come from. Others were just a very 3-sentence paragraph of there will be a policy made that will be adopted, and that's what we're going to go by. And so talking with Eric, we settled, I mean, not settled, but I put this one in as kind of maybe more of a middle ground of, there is a financing program that will be available, but obviously those details have not been worked out yet at all. And that's then why I said, well, let's bring it here and you guys can discuss what you want that program probably to look like. And I guess I was not clear from the RFP responses. Would they be charged with writing that policy, or is that something that we would be doing ourselves too?
I think, initially the RFP was written where they would help us write that, but the commission, I think wants us to do that in-house. So I think that would be.
That's what I was
proposal.
gathering. I'm just making sure I understood.
I think the main reason that, we wanted to get this started was to continue the conversation. As we look across the country and other communities that are doing this, both large and small, they had to put a ordinance in place to achieve their goals. And so I think there's, quite a few details that we still have to work out. But to kind of get the conversation started as part of our lead service replacement program.
And an ordinance, I guess, would be necessary to ensure compliance. Without it, we basically would just be asking for people to participate, and if they didn't, okay, well, thanks for the talk, and then we'll go on to the next house. With this one, there would be a penalty. Instead of, some municipalities did we shut your water off until it's done. And talking with Eric, we thought maybe the penalty one would be a lot less drama. But at the same time, it's not ensuring compliance right then and there. It'd be seeing me, I guess, in municipal court, and then they'd still then have to get it fixed with the fine on top of it. So that's another thing that if you guys want to discuss too, is if you want to go that route of shutting the water off, you could do that. It could definitely change the language, or if you prefer the penalty as well. So.
Yes, Mr. King.
Can you remember the these 6 communities you approached?
I emailed them to Eric. It was Sheboygan, Madison, Green Bay, Eau Claire, Sun Prairie, maybe Lake Bills. I don't know upstairs on my desk.
That's fine. I was curious if it was larger communities.
Yeah, I tried to look for communities that are around our size, but then obviously Madison and Green Bay are bigger, but they seem to be on top of things as well. So they're usually a good resource to look at.
Well, I don't know that the commission's gonna have to take action on this today. John looks like he's got some more questions, but I would suggest that we carry it over and we probably need to do, just as we thought, gonna have to have a lot of public information meetings on this issue in itself. So, thank you.
Mr. Robbins?
Yeah, I second Joe's comment tonight. I think what we need to do is look at it from the perspective of the concerns that I had in here were, is the 15-year time frame for all those things. How do we have that coincide with our public works projects and, other things, and what happens if we're not doing a public works project in those areas? So we go with that. I think there's some implementation issues that we have to think through. The length of time for a special assessment. Some had, some basically covered all the costs except for $5,000 with having $1,000 payable as a special assessment per year, and some of those other ordinances for 5 years, and others had a 10-year no interest penalty. So we would want to talk about that. But I think in the definitions section, I think there are some actual implementation issues. You just need to restructure some of the definition, take out the language and put it later in the ordinance. And I'm concerned a little bit about the reliance on terms like good cause and compelling need with other definition. That creates problems and probably potential litigation without the definition of those terms in there, giving you the ability to refer for good cause and also line for compelling need. What does that mean? And in the absence of definition, you can have problems with those. So perhaps if we could deal with this systematically, could we I think we need to talk about the time frame last, just because it's dependent upon so many other issues. And maybe one of the discussions ought to be early on is, what is the city willing to do from a special assessment perspective? What might that look like? What the PSC approved? What in the, are we going to bear some of the private side costs for LMI individuals? Can we use leverage CDBG grant funding? Can we use ARPA funding? Can we do some other things? But then try to get into what that time frame might be, and then we can look at the logistics and how are we going to go. The 30 days, we notify them that the replacement's going in place, and we give them 30 days to set something up. And one of the problems that we have in the past has been the availability of plumbers and other people to do the work. So is that a realistic time frame? Is that 30 days realistic given our own experience as a commission? So I would suggest that we look at how far out do we want to be planning, how much notice we want to give, and how much we want to ensure success and the likelihood of success in there. Is it 30 days? Is it 90 days? How is it tied in? And if we respond within X number of days, we'll give you can we incentivize early participation by making the special assessments available? And then get into the overall how they work.
I think, that's part of the lead service line replacement plan. And so I think, obviously we reference that in here somewhere because all those details would be best left out of the ordinance. I agree with you. I guess one of my questions is, you answered some of it as far as how does the commission want us to kind of put this together, like to make these decisions, specifically for funding, we've looked into a lot of these things at this point in time. Do you want us to prepare it, make sure it's all complete and what staff wants and bring it back as a whole? Or do you want to take it piece by piece as we move through, one section, from funding to timelines to other things, how would the commission prefer to move this forward?
Mr. Chief.
With the reconstruction of roads, how many homes do we typically have within, in a residential setting? Would there be
It varies a little.
300 or 400?
Yeah, I would say it's probably 180 to 200 typically, you know, if we have a couple streets a year, in a little bit higher dense neighborhoods. So, if we were looking at, replacement, if we talk about timelines, I had talked with a contractor down around the Milwaukee area. He said, probably minimum of 400 service lines a year and up would probably get them to take notice and move up here, to do that in a year. He said typically they're looking to 500 to 600 or more. And so those are just some base numbers that we could possibly look at where we could actually get, a contract every year, put together. The city would create that contract, with them. But we would have to have those services prepared a year in advance. So we would be televising sewer lines. We'd be locating private lines. You know, there's a lot of, like he said 90% of the work is done ahead of time. They just come in and replace whatever method they're going to use. But, so that would be, staff would prepare those a year in advance. We would bid those for the following year. At least, from what I've gathered, what we've talked about, that would be a feasible way for us to get to the 15-year mark. Yeah.
Mr. Robinson.
So you asked the question of how would we like to do it. I think it would be beneficial if we could deal with them sort of sequentially. There are
Okay.
options, there are
Okay.
options available. I think it's important to know what your recommendation will be.
Sure.
But there
Yeah.
may be some options that are available.
Okay.
I think that it would be good to have those, but I don't think we need the whole ordinance at once.
Okay.
So I think if you could bring it in, I think again, the implementation date is so dependent upon everything else.
Yep.
And so I think that's sort of the end.
Yep.
And then I would leave it up to you to decide when to bring what in. But it might be interesting just to see what the assessment policies are, special assessments, forgiveness and other things. I think there's a good, information out there, but I defer to you as to the time.
Yeah, so then as we work through pieces of this, we'll bring sections of it back and with some options for the commission that we feel would be worth looking at, and then we have a discussion, possible decisions.
Mr. Chief.
How does the city council, if they have an appetite to pass something like this, and the mayor? Because it's going to get a lot of kickback. But I don't think we have a choice to come to that conclusion.
I mean, if you're asking me, I think this is where the public communications portion comes in. There has been a desire to get the lead out of the pipes. I've heard that. And so we just have to decide then how we want to go about that. We've tried voluntary forever, and we're still behind. So I think it's worth having the discussion. And of course, anything worth doing is going to get some kickback. Anybody else? Mr. Horse.
Eric, the way you just described the process, are we going to take this up meeting by meeting, month by month, and is this going to drag on?
No,
I think there's an urgency here.
there is, so I think I think there's a few pieces here, Jim. I don't exactly know, but I think we might take up one or two at a time, so it might be a couple more meetings before we can finalize the document, and then bring it back. So I can't tell you exactly, but I don't think it's going to be a month to month. We're talking about this paragraph by paragraph. I think, the challenge is trying to get the starter communication plan and get that out before we get, execution from the commission. And so we'll have to start that plan sooner. So I think there's, some things that have to happen.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think you could put a communications plan together before you have an ordinance,
Yeah, I think we need to.
because, the message may change, but the method is not. So, John's suggestion of enlisting, the support of other groups, at least start the process of reaching out and acquainting other groups with the issue, getting them a little bit up to speed on the background, and so that once we do have an ordinance scoped out, we have a communication plan that's ready to go. We just need to plug the message in.
I think you'll be happy to know that this is something I've talked to the health department about. They're focused on the biggest sources of lead contamination and especially children, which is of course the old paint and things like that, but they know that we're working on this.
Is that to suggest that lead paint is is more of a problem than lead in drinking water?
I guess I can't speak from being the health expert, but I just understand that it is much more, it stays around a little bit longer.
I don't know if this is my place, but conversations I've had with members of the health department, when they have lead exceedances in children's blood, they don't even typically test.
They do not.
They do that.
That surprises me.
It's typically the paint or the dust in the area.
But actually, this might be an interesting opportunity to maybe have an educational presentation to talk about the lead and have this partnership and this discussion. Yes, Ms. Herbst.
I don't know if I missed this or not, but did Green Bay have an ordinance?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Seems like everyone that got a dog had an ordinance.
Most communities do. We have like, once we took our code online from Unicode, we can now search across the entire state at one time, all the ordinances to anybody that has that. And there are many municipalities and about every single one of them now has an ordinance. Kind of going back to the paint thing though, obviously we're just replacing the lead service line going into the house. That we're not doing anything with the pipes inside the house. And so as you were saying, before the fall of 1969, all those houses probably have lead and galvanized steel pipes inside. So, I mean, yeah, we're only touching one of the pipes going into that water, but water supply is circulatory. So, I mean, yeah, so maybe that's also something that should be added to that conversation of, yeah, we're doing this pipe, but if you're going to be doing a full rental, you might want to change all the rest of them too, if you're really concerned about the lead.
And this is an opportunity for education for our entire community.
Yeah, hopefully in 50 years, they don't say PVC is the next bad thing.
Thanks for putting that in my head. Any other questions, comments, needs?
I appreciate the feedback from the commission, gives me some direction on how this is going to proceed. Thank you.
All right, next up, we have item number 5, discussion and possible action issuing an RFP to begin a corrosion control study as directed by the Wisconsin DNR. So big that.
We got a letter from the DNR. We didn't expect this until after the new plant was online. But they want us to set up corrosion control treatment at this point in time to begin as soon as possible. So they're asking just permission to move ahead with an RFP. To go out, there's a couple other communities that I know of. One is Resale that's going through this right now. They're using harvested lead pipe and some pipe networks in their treatment facility, and then they're using different corrosion control methods and different levels that they're injecting into it, over a period of time. So I think that this is going to be 12 to 18 months, I think, Scott. So
Yeah, it's gonna be required. We're supposed to bring recommendations to the DNR in 18 months.
Questions, comments? Mr. Robinson?
Eric, are you anticipating that, in my reading of it, you're not anticipating changing the methods or the treatment of water going into the distribution lines as a result of the new facility?
Well, our treatment methods are different, so the finished water will be different. Is that,
Do we expect that? What will the, is that the, will we know? If we begin, you know, we do oversee where they bring the pipes in, we'll test it with the old water, the new water, the Flint, Michigan problem was when they switched water supplies and it liberated a lot of light in the pipes. So do we know, what the difference will be, or is this meritorious of asking the DNR to give us more time to see what the new chemical composition of the water in the distribution system might be? It doesn't make sense to do a corrosion control study if the source water has a different chemistry than the old.
yeah, I guess that's, go ahead.
The intent is to have both waters on a lead line loop study. So we can season the lead lines with the water that we're treating now and putting into them. And then we will have a controlled area where we can see the effects of the new water going into them ahead of putting it out in the distribution system. So if there's going to be any major issues, we should be ahead of that. That being said, 2 years ago, when we were going through design, they wanted us to keep the same corrosion control as we have in our current plant. So sodium silicate would be the chosen corrosion control going forward. At that time, they wanted us to do studies for approximately 2 years prior to changing it. This study that they're requiring us to do now ties into the new lead and copper rules as well. So the Big 12, the municipalities that are over 50,000 in the state, a year ago had started doing this. So we're the second step on that, and being that we're going into a new facility where our source water may be different, our study has been speeded up or expedited just to see if we're going to have any different issues with our new water.
Yes, Mr. King.
Well, I first heard about this, I thought it was kind of ridiculous, but I guess it's starting to make more sense to me, but, what will be the pH? Because I think the pH is going to be the biggest factor.
Our pH is scheduled to be 8.5 as well.
Oh, it's still going to be at that point.
The only thing that was going to be changing is the means of how we get to what our water characteristics are. So instead of lime, we'll be doing some pre-oxidation and some sodium. What for pH adjustment, Steve? Thank you. I just liked that. So the characteristics of the finished water will be the same, except will be minus the TOC that we are trying to remove for color.
Right, so,
And disinfection byproducts.
well, I guess the proof will be in the pudding of going through the test process, so I guess it makes sense.
All right. Anyone else? Mr. Robinson.
I'll move to authorize the issuance of an RFP for the first, because that's an corrosion control study.
All right, we have a motion to issue the RFP. Do I have a second? Second by Herbst. Any more discussion on this? Right, all of those in favor of issuing an RFP to begin a corrosion control study as directed by the Wisconsin DNR can signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that carries unanimously. Thank you. Next up is item number 6, discussion and possible action on the sale of wastewater UV disinfection equipment to the Red Mountain Sanitary District. Let's take that one.
They want to. So, yeah.
The existing, the wastewater treatment plant has UV disinfection that we operate from, I think, the beginning of May until the end of September. And so that equipment is going to be replaced as part of the new project. And our old equipment is the same model, same brand that they use at Red Mountain. So they were interested in salvaging some of our equipment when that gets removed. The contractor, when we talked to them, they didn't have any intention to salvage it. And Red Mountain offered to pay us $10,000 for that equipment. They're going to use some of it to expand, so they'll have an extra bank of UV lights in their system and then spare parts going forward. So it's kind of a unique opportunity. And it seems like it makes sense to not to recycle or to demolish equipment that we have that they can put to good use and we'd be able to make a little bit of money off of it.
I move we accept their offer. I move we accept that offer.
All right, we've got a motion set
I second
by Sips. Mr. Robinson, yes.
If we use additional costs associated with extracting it for purposes of resale versus salvage? Or do you-
No, not really. They'll, actually, they've already removed that equipment, this last Friday. And so that's something mostly Remote did. And it would have had to come out in any case. So, yeah, no, there's really no significant cost.
Anyone else? All right, so all of those in favor of installing the wastewater UV disinfection equipment to the Recruitment Metropolitan Sewerage District, then signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Item number 7, discussion and possible action on the purchase of 2 quad axle dump trucks for the wastewater plant.
So, as you know, we're moving from Class B to Class A biosolids, dry biosolids. And so in the building, the design was initially for roll-off dumpsters. We've had to come to determine that maybe the roll-off dumpsters aren't the best option for us, kind of cumbersome to remove and dump and things like that. So one of the options that we've looked at are some quad axle trucks, which would park in that building, and those biosolids would drop directly into those. And once they get filled up, somebody would just jump in and either haul those to the landfill or haul them wherever, or put them in the barn for storage. The challenge that we have right now is, the amount of time, so that we could cover overnight and so we don't have anybody coming in at night having to move those trucks. So the other options is we would put in larger trailers, park those in, but then we would have to purchase a tractor. And then once those get full, we would hook them up and then drag those out too. The operators feel pretty strongly that the quad axles would be a benefit. The reason this is coming right now is because there are 2 of them, used ones, that are available right now, and new trucks are 12 to 18 months out. For one, there's significant savings to buy used in good condition right now, and on second, that they're available now. If we did not have a direct option at this point, we would most likely have to contract out for moving that material at this point, once the dryer starts up. Because we don't have any trucks big enough to fill those throughout the night. We'd have to have somebody come in. We have some tandem axles and stuff, but nothing big enough. And then we're getting into snow season anyway for DPW, so having trucks available is going to be challenging. The other thing was we were not budgeted for this, so I don't know, Val, if there was any. Okay.
For this year.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Person.
We don't have any detail here. What are we looking at in terms of cost for 2 used?
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's 150,000 a piece. So it'd be $300,000 for 2 quad axles.
What do they sell for new? Understanding that you can't get new these days.
I think that it was 225 or 275 for the quad axles, I think.
I was gonna say 250, but
Yeah.
we could,
So it'll be a $300,000 budget
It would be.
item.
We don't know if this is, the challenge is right now, we don't know if this is the end. You have to get, result. Like if the quad axles are the way that we're going to continue to go. I mean, there's there's still discussions with others who want this material once it becomes Class A. So, it could be where we purchase some trailers and then we have a private outfit come in every day, hook up the trailer and drag it out and bring it back empty. You know, that way we're not hauling it and we're not. So, you know, to purchase the quad axles right now is, it's an option, but at this point, I don't know if this is the end all on, you know, the final, detail on how we're going to handle this material. If they think they add Dave or.
Yeah, there's still some unknown question as to, we kind of have an idea of how many pounds of solids we put on a dry weight basis, but we don't know until we get the process up and running what the volume will be. So even though we greatly reduce the water content, it doesn't necessarily mean we'll greatly reduce the volume. So that kind of factors into how often we'd have to dump the trucks or on. And then also it's been kind of an issue we don't really have when we've talked to some of the potential outfits that could take it. We don't really have an example of the product to show to. We don't have it up and running yet. We don't know exactly what it'll be. So there are some unknowns, but the plant staff feel that the quad axle truck would be more versatile and would be more likely to cover what we need. So,
Ms. Herbst?
Where are these trucks coming from? And isn't there a deal, buy one and get one free?
That'd be nice, Tom, if there was, yeah.
the trucks are actually coming, I think, North Carolina, so it is quite a ways, and we would plan to bring those back ourselves. So there would be some transportation costs.
Mr. Robinson?
Have we done any life cycle comparisons of various approaches? Possibly a quad versus a trailer.
I did have some trailers so the quad axles are 18 yards each. And so, we could put some sides on them so that they would, you know, have a little bit more capacity. With these two used, that would be $300,000. 30-yard push trailers, where we'd also need a tractor to hook those up. The push trailers would be 110 a piece, so $220,000, and then a tractor is estimated at about 65,000. So that would be about 285,000.
Yes,
I thought we had a tractor, because we dispose of
DPW has,
full of those dirty rats.
yeah, and they don't use it that often. I mean,
We have a farm tractor, but we're really talking about like a semi tractor
yeah,
to pick up those boxes.
Yeah. yes, yeah. So, and they do make larger, push trailers too. I mean, these are 30 yards, so they hold more, there'd be more time, you know, which is one of the advantages, so. Because the dryers, once we started, it would run 24/7 for a number of days, and so it would run through the night, so we want to make sure that we have capacity throughout the night, that we don't have to call somebody in every night to haul out.
Mr. Robinson?
So it sounds like it's actually the push trailers would be the cheaper alternative. We don't know what our disposal options are going forward. What's the time frame on needing a decision? It seems like the 18 versus 30 cubic yards is 30 yards is an advantage, but you still have to figure out how are we going to get it all across. So what's our time frame? Need to make a decision. Fully operational.
Well, the dryers are scheduled to go online in November. The reason this is coming with the quad axle is because there's two used at this point, that are available, and they aren't gonna hold them for us, at this point, so. So we wanted to have the discussion, the operators down at the plant feel strongly that the quad axles are the way to go. But again, as you said, we know that two options for the material is land application like we're doing now with the Class Bs. Or landfill it, and they can use it as cover material according to Melissa over at the landfill. And then, but there are options, that haven't been completely vetted out yet for the private sector to take it.
So do we have 30-yard push trailers and boxes in the budget?
No. No. Well, see, it was initially in the project, it was anticipated, but it didn't seem reasonable to do a 30-year loan on some, on a truck. So, yeah. But for this year, John, no, we don't have money in the budget for these.
I would move to direct staff to come in with a budget amendment relative to the transportation of the dry sludge. A budget transfer of $300,000. And with the understanding that within that motion, we would give the discretion as to whether it's the 30-yard push trailers or the quad, based upon the best professional judgment at the time of the acquisition. We need, it sounds like we're going to need in November, some sort of system in place to move that sludge. So we have to, the intent of the motion is to give you flexibility based upon professional judgment.
So, budget transfer for up to $300,000 to move the sludge or dry.
Purposes of transporting.
Okay. Oh, we have our finance director here. I don't know if she would like to comment on this, but I would take a second if there's somebody. We got a second by Phipps. All right. Liz, do you have any creative problem solving for us here?
So I think Eric and I had talked about this. I have been seeing kind of an erosion in the cash position of the sewer utility. If you recall, we delayed the rate increase, which has had some, kind of negative financial implications to the utility. And really it becomes an affordability issue. One of the things Eric and I talked about was, if you recall, a number of years ago, the water utility borrowed money from the sewer utility, and we were paying that back on an annual basis, of perhaps accelerating those payments to provide more cash to the sewer utility. And the rate increase just went in recently. Because of the quarterly billing, we haven't actually experienced any, increases in cash because of that. Our bond covenants require that we set aside funds because we have our first interest payment for the sewer plant project on November 1st. So we have to every month put aside money to pay that interest, as well as the debt, the principal payment, which will happen next May. And that, I think last month that was about $500,000 maybe. So, that was our concern, is whether the utility would actually have sufficient cash to handle the purchase of the capital. But like I said, the water utility actually its cash position is going down a bit too with, again, these transfers for the debt service. So we, just started looking to see if the water utility accelerated its repayment to the sewer, if that would help. That's kind of the situation we're in right now.
Yes, Mr. Swartz.
So if I understand the discussion, it's entirely possible that we would purchase 2 used vehicles at a cost of $300,000 total. And 6 months from now, we might not need them. Some other disposal method or some other hauler would emerge.
Right. I would say that's entirely possible, just because we haven't, fully determined how we were going to, move that material around. And who is gonna be interested in it, you know, other than Sue's and some landscapers, you know, and on a consistent basis. So yeah, I think that is possible. You know, yeah.
Mr. Robinson.
Whatever financial situation, yeah, the uncertainty, other lease options.
That's what I want.
I think, you know, one of the things, I think in the interim, we were looking at just, you know, contracting this out and whether that's like, leasing some trailers or leasing some roll-off dumpsters for now and having somebody come and pick them up out to the landfill. You know, just in the interim until we determine, you know, what's the volume of material that we're gonna have? What is, you know, and then we'll have material to actually, you know, work with some private outfits. Do you want the material? Can, you know, it really narrowed down the direction, you know, that we want to go. It's difficult in our cash position right now. But we had these two pieces of equipment and, I, you know, wanted to bring it to the commission that this is kind of the situation that we're in. To inform you and then, kind of where we're at, so. I don't know if that cleared anything up, actually.
Follow-up, if we buy for 300,000, inside 6 months, is there a market for those? So could we sell them for 200,000?
I don't know how much we could sell them for. I would assume that there's a market for them. I mean, they're, according to the operators, they're in good condition, you know, they're worth the money, but yeah, I would say that there's a market to resell them. I just don't know what kind of market there's gonna be in 6 months for a used truck. If it's gonna be the same, more, less, yeah.
Do we have the funds? Got a motion on the floor, but we don't seem to have funds available to pay for it. So
We certainly don't have them in our budget right now. So I think it would, as Mary Ann said, you know, they haven't fully looked at if the water utility could advance more money this year. I think we were paying 140,000 a year back to the sewer utility. Is that what it was? Yeah. So I don't know if the water utility could afford to, you know, pay another 140 or 150,000 to help that or not. So, but yeah, but the rate increase just went in July 1, so we won't fully see those rates on the sewer side for another couple months.
are there opportunities for us to defer any other capital projects in the 2020?
I have looked at that. There are some capital projects that, you know, we haven't been doing, but they're small. You know, some studies and things like that. So nothing that would definitely, you know, make up for anything significant at this point within the 21 budget.
Mayor, I'm going to ask that we perhaps this decision until next week. For the purposes of making sure we've got the funding and
Okay, so
active on it without having a funding source.
great. So the request is to defer the decision until next week's special meeting. Ms. Herbst, you made the second. Is that okay with you? Okay,
I will have some more information in the packet to look at for next week, so with a little bit more. So appreciate that.
Mr. G.
Would they hold the trucks for that period of time?
We can ask, I'm not quite sure. So, they did give us an agreement to sign that they would hold, but then that obligated us to a certain amount, so we weren't willing to do that. For a month, probably not, but maybe for a week, that'd be okay. So we'll ask.
All right. We don't need to vote on deferring. Okay. All right, the next item on our agenda is item number 8, discussion on confirming a date for a special commission meeting to discuss recruitment and retention. Thursday, October 14th, 12:30 to 1:30 p.m. I have been told to make sure that we limit our discussion to the discussion about the date and not the topic. So if there's any discussion about that date, I hope it works for everybody. See what's up.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that it works for everybody. So.
Okay, let's-
Okay.
Good, thank you. Last item, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Robinson, second by Jean. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. See you next week at 12:30. What is going